In order for WebSmart to deploy web applications to the iSeries, a few options need to be configured to specify how the client will connect to the server. To access the server connection settings, I'll navigate to Tools and Options. In the Options menu, we can see the category for servers. We'll start with the IBM iServer. There are no existing servers, so I'm going to add one here. Now I can start filling in each one of these parameters. The name here can be anything I choose. It's just going to identify this particular connection. In this case, I'm connecting to a development box, so I'm going to call it dev. The IP address is the IP of the iSeries that we'll be connecting to. If you usually connect using a host name, you can do that too. In this case, I'm going to use the host name of my iSeries. The port field here corresponds to the server port used by a subsystem called Exodus. This subsystem manages the connection between the IDE and the server components. It is usually 4015.
XLWebLib here is the default WebSmart application library. It's the product library that gets installed with WebSmart.
If you want to make sure that the IBM i server connection is working, you can click Test Connection, and it'll verify that it can connect to your server and verify that you have the correct WebSmart library installed. Here we can choose the library that ILE applications will be generated to, and the library list that they'll use. You can also specify the source file that will be used when compiling your ILE applications.
The default web path is the URL that the web browser will use to access your ILE applications. This folder links to your web application library through the Apache server.
Once we are done with those server settings, we can also review a few settings that pertain to all of your servers. For PHP applications, we'll need to create an FTP connection. You can find these options just a little further down on the left here. Just like the IBM i connection, I'll add a new one. We'll need to give this server connection a name, which is for our reference. We'll also need an FTP address, which will usually correspond to the IP or host name of your iSeries. The initial dir will be the path on the IFS where WebSmart will generate the resulting PHP files onto your server. I'll just fill in the default directory for WebSmart PHP. That's www.websmart htdocs wsphp. This path will be used by your browser to access those PHP applications. In the Apache HTTP server, this web path is linked with the IFS directory. You can change these directories in the Apache configuration. The mirror path is an optional path on your local PC where PHP files can be generated for backup or version control. Whenever PHP applications are generated to the server, they'll also be generated to this local directory. You'll also need to provide a username and password that has permission to use this FTP connection. Finally, the FTP port corresponds to the port on the iSeries that is configured for FTP connections. In most cases, it is 21. Passive mode here refers to the mode of the FTP connection. Once you've filled in these options, you can double check that it is all correct by clicking Test Connection. It'll be able to tell you right away if these base settings are working. Keep in mind, though, that this test doesn't verify your initial directory or web path are working, just the base FTP connection. Once you have these settings properly configured, you can move right on to creating web applications.